It is the middle of the week. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show here on Newsmax TV. Coming up here in mere moments, the President of the United States will get you some of his comments he just delivered from the White House here moments ago. In the meantime, it was another day of bombshells in Michigan. I say bombshells because that word led news stories ad nauseum during President Trump's first term in office. Here's another word: explosive. There were explosive charges leveled at election officials, higher ups at the Postal Service, and thug poll watchers hired by left-wing loons who reportedly threatened and intimidated GOP poll watchers. Tonight, we're going to combine our top stories and the preamble. We will highlight and show some of the more damaging sworn testimony given by everyday Americans in Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. The Salcedo Show exposes bombshell allegations of voter fraud. That's the focus of tonight's preamble. We begin in Pennsylvania, a state run by a controversial, there's another word, a state run by a controversial governor and secretary of state. One observer in Chester County, a Democrat, tells a story of actually being verbally attacked for challenging a ballot.
The man who was electioneering and was a poll watcher, but also a committee man, confronted myself and the clerk and said, "You don't know what you're talking about. Anybody can sign the affidavit. Why don't you stop trying to cause problems? Why don't you shut up?" Started getting in my face, cursing at me, telling me that I needed to be quiet, that I didn't know what I was talking about, and I should just learn to sit down and not say anything and just let it happen.
The same thing happened in Michigan, another battleground state. People literally kicked out of the building for simply trying to do their jobs. These were volunteers trying to ensure that we all had a free and fair election.
I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 130 and 160.
Michigan poll workers also described seeing rampant voter fraud in the form of blatantly forged military ballots.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter, and the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote, and none of the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters, of which I saw several that day. Throughout the day, that's how they would override voters that were neither in the electronic poll book or the supplemental updated poll book.
Thank you.
And it was the same story over there in Arizona with phony signatures not being verified. President Trump has been warning about this over and over, and rightly so.
I started paying much closer attention to the signatures, thinking this didn't even make sense to me, because the signature on the ballot that was being compared to other signatures didn't even resemble in any way what they were comparing it to. They were completely illegible. They were just scribbles.
Maybe the worst part of all of this is the documented instances of votes they were just being handed over to Biden, votes that he didn't even earn and certainly didn't deserve.
The ballot came across the screen. The ballot had a straight party ticket vote for both the Democrat and the Republican. It was a filled-in circle, which is an intentional mark. It's not a dash, it's not a dot. When the ballot came across the screen, there was no other marks. None of the judges and none of the other ballot proposals had been voted on. The poll worker then said, "I think I'm going to give it to the Democrats."
And yet another poll worker alleges that old ballots were being used in November's election.
I also witnessed a August 4th primary ballot come in, to which they decided they would go ahead and duplicate it to a general election ballot.
What? A ballot from the August 4th primary. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. We've been telling you all about the claims against Dominion voting systems, right? And how allegedly easy it is to rig them to produce a false vote. And we've been told by election officials in the various states that they've vetted these machines and they know them frontward and backward. But apparently, Even Dominion's own IT people don't know how their own machines work, as this Arizona poll worker describes.
They reset the tabulation machines 3 times to 0.
I beg your pardon, I
They
didn't hear you.
reset the tabulation machines 3 times to 0.
At what point?
Throughout, because they did not know, and this is literally what Dominion and Renee, who works for the county, told me. They didn't know what would happen after so many batches had gone through those new high-speed tabulation machines. So apparently they can take a card out and start over at 0.
Now, there was another story that was told by a postal driver, one of the guys that drives the big postal trucks. Now, it was about 9 minutes of testimony, so I'm just going to basically tell you what he said in his testimony. He alleges he saw thousands upon thousands of pre-filled out ballots with return mailing addresses that he had to ship from New York to Pennsylvania on October 21st. He had to sit in the lot, he says, for about 6 hours. Nobody would tell him what was going on. Finally, a head honcho in the United States Postal Service. Yes, the very same, I'm assuming he's a member of the Postal Union that endorsed Beijing Biden. Yes, he came out and said to him, look, just hang tough. You're going to need to go over to Pennsylvania to make this delivery. He goes, Pennsylvania? That doesn't make any sense. That's not part of my normal route. No, you're going to have to go. And this truck driver said to this official at the post office, well, I've been here for 6 hours. You're going to have to basically give me a ticket which shows that I've been here. And this is customary, he said. You get a ticket showing that where your rig was and that you actually were present there. You're also going to have to give me a late slip so that people don't blame me for sitting around here because it was you guys here at this facility that caused me to be late. And the postal official, high-ranking postal official, denied him those 2 tickets, those pieces of official documentation. The guy said he transported these pre-filled out ballots from New York to Pennsylvania, dropped them off, and then unhooked his rig, put the trailer in its traditional parking spot, and then went home. Now, he says ever since he had been doing this route, he has had this one trailer. He came back the next day, and it was gone. Nowhere to be found. And this has yet to be explained, but we're told, oh, this is normal operating procedure? Really?
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.